People who avoid family gatherings experience obligation very differently. While others show up out of duty, guilt, or tradition, they choose distance, not because they hate their family, but because they've learned that presence doesn't always mean connection. They're the ones who always have an excuse. Work came up, they're feeling sick, traffic is bad, plans changed. And while everyone else sees it as avoidance, they see it as survival. But what nobody tells you is why they really can't bring themselves to walk through that door. And the answer? It's darker than you think. People who avoid family gatherings aren't running from love, they're running from performance. And here's what took me years to understand. I used to force myself to go. I'd park outside my parents' house for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, rehearsing conversations in my head like I was preparing for an exam. Once inside, I'd smile when expected, laugh at the right moments, ask the right questions. But inside, I was counting down the minutes until I could leave without seeming rude. Every second felt like holding my breath underwater. But here's the part that broke me. It wasn't that I didn't care about my family, it was that being around them required me to become someone I wasn't anymore. Someone smaller, someone quieter, someone who didn't ask uncomfortable questions or challenge outdated beliefs. And that exhaustion, that's what most people never see. They see someone who doesn't make an effort. What they don't see is someone who's already exhausted from years of trying. They've realized that family gatherings aren't safe spaces for them. And this is where it gets dark. For some people, family gatherings are where their boundaries get violated most, where old wounds get reopened disguised as jokes, where they're reminded of who they used to be, not who they fought to become. But here's what nobody wants to admit. Picture this. You walk in and immediately someone comments on your weight, your career, your relationship status, things you've specifically asked them not to bring up, but they do it anyway, because we're family somehow justifies every invasion. And here's the part that stings. When you object, you're told you're too sensitive. You're making a big deal out of nothing. You're ruining the mood, so you learn to stay silent, or you learn to stay away. Here's what most people don't realize. Every gathering becomes a test of how much discomfort they can tolerate before they break. How many passive-aggressive comments, how many boundary violations, how many times they can smile through pain before their face cracks. It's not about being antisocial, it's about self-preservation. And people who've been hurt enough times learn that the only way to protect themselves is not to show up at all, because you can't be disrespected at a gathering you don't attend. They've outgrown the roles they were assigned, but nobody noticed. Every family operates like a script written decades ago. The responsible one, the screw-up, the peacemaker, the troublemaker. And here's the thing nobody talks about. People who avoid gatherings are often the ones who've rewritten their character, but the family is still reading from the old version. So you show up, and immediately, everyone expects you to play a part you don't identify with anymore. Your brother makes the same joke about you that stopped being funny 15 years ago. Your mom introduces you the same way she did when you were 12. Your relatives ask the same patronizing questions. And there's something deeply painful about being seen as who you were, not who you are. But here's where it gets even worse. When you try to show them who you've become, they resist it. They don't like the new you. You're different now. You've changed. And not in a good way, according to them. You can't be your authentic self and your family's version of you at the same time. That creates a psychological split that's unbearable. It's like being asked to wear a costume that doesn't fit anymore, but being told you have to keep wearing it anyway. So they stop trying to bridge that gap. They just stop showing up. They're protecting themselves from toxic patterns nobody wants to acknowledge. Not all families are healthy. And here's what makes this complicated. Some are deeply dysfunctional, but everyone pretends everything is fine. Gaslighting gets called "you're too sensitive." Favoritism gets called "you're jealous." Boundary setting gets called "you've changed." People who avoid gatherings have recognized patterns that others either don't see or choose to ignore. And here's a story that'll make this clear. I had a friend who stopped going to Christmas dinner. When I asked why, she said something I'll never forget. "Every year my dad gets drunk and says things that hurt. Every year my mom tells me to just let it go. Every year I leave feeling worse about myself than when I arrived. At some point I had to ask myself, why am I volunteering for this?" And that's the moment of clarity that changes everything. But here's what nobody tells you. When you realize that showing up means re-entering cycles that harm you, you face a choice. Keep going and keep getting hurt, or stop going and deal with guilt. When you've done the therapy, set the boundaries, done the healing work, going back into a system that hasn't changed feels like undoing all your progress. It's like being sober and volunteering to hang out in a bar, so they don't go, not because they're weak, because they're protecting what they've built, and that protection is sacred. They're exhausted from being interrogated about their life choices. But here's where it gets even more layered. Family gatherings often turn into performance reviews disguised as concern. When are you getting married? Why are you still single? When are you having kids? Why don't you have a real job? Why did you move so far away? And people who avoid these events have learned something crucial. No answer is ever good enough. Here's what happens. They've tried explaining. They've tried setting boundaries. They've tried redirecting conversations. But the questions keep coming. The unsolicited advice, the comparisons to cousins who are doing so much better, the subtle implications that their life is somehow wrong. And here's the part that breaks people. There's something deeply exhausting about defending your existence to people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. But here's what's even worse. When you do defend yourself, you're told you're being defensive. When you set boundaries, you're being difficult. When you ask them to stop, you're being disrespectful. You can't win. So they stop playing, they stop defending, they stop explaining, they stop showing up, because their life isn't up for debate. And they've realized that the people who truly love them don't need their choices justified. They've accepted the hardest truth. Blood doesn't automatically mean connection. This is what breaks people's brains. Society has fed us this narrative since birth. Family is everything. Blood is thicker than water. You should love your family no matter what. But people who avoid gatherings have had a devastating realization. Just because someone is related to you doesn't mean they're good for you. And here's what makes this so painful. They didn't want to believe this. They tried for years to make it work. They showed up. They gave second chances, third chances, 10th chances. They bent themselves into shapes that hurt, just to maintain connection, until one day they couldn't anymore. But here's the thing nobody prepares you for. The moment you realize your family might not be your safe place is one of the loneliest moments of your life. Because if you can't find belonging with the people who share your blood, where do you belong? They've learned that you can love people from a distance. You can wish them well. You can hope they're happy. But you don't have to sacrifice your mental health to prove your love. You don't have to attend every event. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. That realization is both devastating and liberating. It hurts like hell, but it also sets you free. They carry a specific kind of guilt that others will never understand. But here's what people on the outside miss completely. Avoiding family gatherings isn't easy. It doesn't feel good. It comes with crushing guilt. Guilt for disappointing people. Guilt for being the difficult one. Guilt for not being able to just suck it up like everyone else seems to. And here's what that guilt looks like. There are holidays where they sit alone while their phone fills with family photos. Moments where they wonder if they're the problem. Nights where they question if protecting their peace is worth being labeled the black sheep. But here's the twisted part. They know if they explained why they're staying away, they'd be told they're overreacting, being too sensitive, holding grudges, so they carry this weight silently. They don't get to defend themselves without being judged for it. And here's what makes it even harder. Other people get to be close to their families. Other people get to enjoy gatherings. Other people don't have to choose between their peace and their presence. So they carry an additional layer of grief. Grief for what they don't have. Grief for what was never safe for them. But they've learned something important. Guilt is a poor reason to show up, because when you attend out of guilt, you're not really there anyway. You're physically present but emotionally barricaded. You're watching the clock, counting down the hours, and everyone can feel it. So what's the point? They've built chosen families instead, and that's where their energy goes. Here's what changes everything. People who avoid family gatherings aren't isolating themselves. They're often deeply connected to people who actually see them. Friends who became family. Partners who understand without needing explanations. Communities where they can breathe. They've learned something revolutionary. Family isn't about biology. It's about belonging. And they've found belonging elsewhere. But here's what this looks like. Picture Thanksgiving dinner. But instead of sitting at a table where you're misunderstood, you're with people who know your story, who celebrate your growth instead of resenting it, who ask about your life because they genuinely care, not because they're fishing for something to criticize. This is where their energy goes. Into relationships that don't require them to shrink. Into spaces where they can exist fully. Into connections built on mutual respect, not obligation or guilt. And here's the beautiful part. They haven't given up on family. They've just redefined what family means. And that redefinition saved them. The psychology of people who avoid family gatherings isn't about hatred, resentment, or being antisocial. It's about profound self-awareness. It's about recognizing that not every tradition serves you, that not every relationship is healthy, just because it's familial, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is create distance. They're not broken. They're not ungrateful. They're not the difficult ones. They're the ones who valued their peace enough to protect it, even when it meant disappointing others, even when it meant being misunderstood, even when it meant sitting alone on holidays while everyone else gathered. And here's what most people will never understand. That takes more courage than showing up ever could. So if you're someone who dreads family gatherings, who makes excuses, who feels relief when plans fall through, know this: you're not broken, you're not ungrateful, you're not missing some fundamental piece of humanity that makes everyone else able to tolerate what you can't. You're honoring what you need. And that's not selfish. That's survival. That's growth. That's you choosing the life you've built over the role you were assigned. The world will keep telling you that family is everything. But you know better. Family is only everything when it's healthy, when it respects you, when it allows you to exist as you actually are. And if your family can't do that, you have every right to stay away. Are you someone who avoids family gatherings? Drop a comment and share your story. You're not alone in this, and someone needs to hear it. If this hit home, hit subscribe. We explore the psychology of behaviors most people judge but never understand, and smash that like button. It helps us reach others who need this message. Your peace isn't negotiable. Protect it fiercely,